My parents spent 3 years telling everyone my husband was a failure. Then he bought their company. He sent one email. My father built a furniture business from one store. 4 locations. He was very proud. He decided Ryan wasn't worthy of that pride. First dinner. My father asked about income. My mother told her sister I had married someone with ideas and not much else. This email. He sent it on a Tuesday. He didn't tell me first. I found out the same way my parents did. Who Ryan is, what my parents said, what he was building while they said it, and what one email changed permanently. Let me start with Ryan, because without understanding who he is, none of this makes sense. Ryan started his firm with his savings and one client. He didn't come from money. He worked like that was temporary. It was. We met at a work event in Manhattan. Everyone there talked about themselves. He asked me 3 questions and actually listened. I work in brand strategy. I understand what something actually is versus what it appears to be. That skill was useful. My parents built Calloway home interiors over 30 years. 4 locations. A very specific idea of what success looked like. Ryan didn't match it. My father respects visible success. A storefront. Something you drive past. Ryan worked in private equity. Nothing to drive past. That was the problem. My mother didn't say Ryan was a failure. She said she was worried about my future. To enough people. It became consensus. He proposed at Battery Park. Said, I know what I'm building. I know how long it takes. I want to build it with you. My father shook Ryan's hand. Asked 2 questions immediately: assets, revenue. Ryan answered honestly. The numbers were early. The handshake loosened. A week later, he called me. Said, I've seen a lot of men with plans. About Ryan, who had already returned 22%. My mother called her sister the same week. Said, I might be making a mistake. About the man who would own their business. My father's wedding toast, he hoped Ryan's business would find its footing. At the toast, Ryan thanked him and raised his glass. Said nothing. I asked in the car, does it bother you? He said, it tells me where the bar is. That's useful. Music went up. First year, every family event. My father asked about the firm every time. Ryan answered honestly. Numbers grew. Questions stayed the same. Thanksgiving, year 1. My father said he admired people who chased dreams even when returns were modest. Ryan's fund, 31% that year. Ryan heard modest. He passed the potatoes. In the car I said, he called you modest. Ryan said, I know. That was it. The year my father called him modest, Ryan closed his second institutional client, $12 million in commitments. He didn't mention it at dinner. I wanted to defend him every time. He told me not to. Said, let them think what they think. It doesn't change my work. Calloway Home Interiors was real. 30 years old. 4 locations. Mid-market furniture retail. E-commerce was eating the margins. It was urgent. A year in, Ryan said, your father's business has a structural problem. The model, not the stores. I said, should we tell him? He said, he hasn't asked. Christmas. My uncle said, sounds like a lot of risk. My father nodded. He nodded at someone else's concern like it confirmed something. Her book club. My mother told them the marriage might not be easy for me. Ryan had just made a 40 under 40 list. He was at his desk before 6 a.m. No one was watching. He worked like someone who believed in what he was building completely. I understand positioning. Ryan wasn't positioned well for my parents' framework. But their framework was wrong. He wasn't mediocre. He was early. Year 2. 1 Calloway location underperforming significantly. My father called it a temporary dip. Retail doesn't have temporary dips. It has signals. Easter, year 2. My father said mediocre for the first time to my uncle in the kitchen. He thought I couldn't hear. I heard. I stood in the hallway 30 seconds, walked back to the table, sat next to Ryan, put my hand on his arm. He kept talking. I told him in the car. He used the word mediocre. Ryan was quiet a moment, said, "Okay," asked if I wanted coffee. Monday after Easter, he began the financial model for the Calloway acquisition. He told me later, Easter was the day I decided to formalize. Ryan said, 4 locations, no e-commerce, overhead structured for 2005. A distressed asset on a 2-year runway, not cruel, accurate. By year 2, the consensus in the extended family, Maya married a nice man going nowhere, my father, my mother, the book club, 2 neighbors. Year 2 at Hargrove, 3 employees, 47 million 28% net return. My father, still using the word mediocre at Easter. At home, we didn't discuss my parents' opinion. We talked about the work. He never brought up the dinners. He said, "It's fine." It was. I gave my father the numbers, the 40 under 40. He said, "I'm sure he's doing well." Didn't update the assessment. Evidence wasn't the issue. The pattern was set by year 2. They called him mediocre. He was building the model to acquire their business. That's the world before. Let me take you through what this looked like, not the summary. The specific moments. The specific words. Patterns need to be named precisely. 4th of July. My uncle pulled me aside, said my father worried Ryan was beneath me, professionally, socially. Ryan had 47 million under management. Ryan handed my father a beer. My father, who had just called him beneath me, Ryan didn't know. He handed him the beer anyway. September dinner. Aunt Carol asked about the 5-year plan. My father cut in, still finding his footing. Ryan described the plan anyway. Father changed the subject. In the car I said, "You handled it well." He said, "I described the plan." I didn't need his permission to do that. End of year 2. Hargrove, 61 million 3rd institutional client, 31% net return. My father had just called him going nowhere. The underperforming Calloway location lost money for 18 months. My father took a loan to cover it. Ryan found out, updated his model. Christmas, year 2. My father said investment was a mediocre industry, set it to the table, while Ryan sat at it, didn't look at him. Ryan said, returns separate the serious from the casual. Then he had more potatoes. My father had no response. No one did. In the car I said, "You didn't have to say that." He said, "It was accurate and on topic." He was always waiting for the right moment. January, year 3. Hargrove closed a $92 million acquisition. My father's business, 1 location in active distress, 2 others trending down. Year 3. My mother told a neighbor we were struggling, while Ryan closed $92 million in January, while I led a Fortune 500 relaunch. By year 3, I was tired, not of Ryan, of managing the gap between who he was and who they said he was. My father closed the underperforming location in February. We saw the sign in the window. He'd taken debt across the others. Ryan knew it was coming. Easter, year 3. My father didn't mention the closure, talked about restructuring, still called Ryan's work speculative, upgraded from mediocre to speculative. Ryan sat at that table knowing what was coming. He helped carry dishes, thanked my mother, shook my father's hand. Completely normal. In the car after the last dinner he said, "The acquisition moves in 4 to 6 weeks. I want you to know before it happens." I said, "They won't understand." He said, "I know." He wasn't asking permission. He was giving me the information he had promised. The 6 weeks before, same work, same hours. The acquisition was already complete. The email was the last formality, sent when the paperwork was signed. Mediocre, speculative, beneath me, going nowhere, 3 years, multiple rooms, multiple relatives. Then 1 email on a Tuesday. File 2. The email was sent at 8:47 am on a Tuesday in March. Ryan was already at his desk. He had been there since 5:50. Subject line: Calloway Home Interiors Notice of Acquisition. One paragraph. CC, the firm's legal team, no greeting, no pleasantries. Signed, Ryan Hargrove, Managing Partner. I found out at 9:15 when my phone rang. It was my mother. She said, "Did you know about this?" I said, "I knew it was coming." She said, "He bought your father's business." I said, "Yes." She said, "Without telling us." I said, "He told you in the email." This morning. My father called 4 minutes after my mother. He did not say hello. He said, "What is this?" I said, "It's an acquisition notice, Dad." He said, "Does Ryan know who I am? What I built?" I said, "He does. He's been studying your financials for 14 months. He knows exactly." My father was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't know the business was in that much trouble." I said, "Ryan knew." For a while, Ryan was at his desk when both calls came in. I texted him, they called. He replied, "I know." His legal team had already confirmed receipt. The email said one thing: Hargrove Capital had completed the acquisition of Calloway Home Interiors in a distressed sale. Terms attached: Ryan Hargrove, Managing Partner. Distressed sale. Those 2 words. In writing. Sent to my father, who had spent 3 years telling rooms full of people his son-in-law was going nowhere. I drove to Westport that afternoon. Not because Ryan asked me to, because they were still my parents, and this was a hard day for them. My father was at the kitchen table when I arrived. He had the email printed out. He had read it multiple times. You could tell. He said, "I don't understand how this happened." I said, "The business was carrying unsustainable overhead and had no e-commerce infrastructure. Ryan identified it 2 years ago." He said, "Why didn't he say something?" I said, "He mentioned it once." You changed the subject. He looked at the table. He remembered. My mother came in. She sat down. She said, "What does this mean for the stores?" I said, "Ryan plans to restructure. That's in the attached terms." She said, "Will he keep them open?" I said, "I don't know. That's his decision." She said, "He's your husband." I said, "And that's his firm. Those are different things." My father looked at the email again. He looked at the signature. Ryan Hargrove, Managing Partner, Hargrove Capital. He read it twice. Then he set it down. He didn't say mediocre. He didn't say speculative. He didn't say going nowhere. He read the signature and put the paper down. That was enough. I sat with them for an hour. Ryan did not come with me. That was a deliberate choice. His job was the email. Mine was the hour after. I drove home and told him I'd been to Westport. He said, "How are they?" I said, "Processing." He said, "That's fair." That was it. He didn't ask what they said about him. He didn't ask if they were angry. He asked how they were. That's who Ryan is. The acquisition was completed at fair market value for a distressed asset. Ryan's team handled my father's employees with care. No mass layoffs, a restructure. My father kept his title for 6 months in a consulting capacity. Ryan structured it that way. He did not have to. He chose to. He chose to. I asked him why. He said, "Because he built something real for 30 years. That deserves a transition." Not a dismissal. Not a dismissal. My father had dismissed Ryan for 3 years. Ryan gave him a 6-month transition. That distinction is the whole story in miniature. My mother called me a week after the acquisition. She said, "I owe you an apology." I said, "You owe Ryan one." She said, "Yes, I know." She called Ryan directly. He took the call. She said she was sorry. He said, "I appreciate that." Diane. He used her first name. She noticed. My father took longer. 3 weeks. He called Ryan and asked if they could have coffee. Ryan said yes. They met at a diner in Westport. Ryan didn't tell me what they talked about for a long time. He said, "It was between me and your father." I respected that completely. What I know, my father shook his hand at the end of that coffee. A different handshake than the one at the engagement. Different entirely. I kept a mental file. Brand strategists document things. The book club comment went in under things my mother said to people she should not have said them to. The pattern had 5 components: my father's direct dismissal, my mother's concerned distribution, extended family, the neighborhood, the book club. 5 channels. I told him about all 5 channels, laid it out like a brand audit. He listened to everything. He said, "Okay, same word as always, remarkably consistent." Year 3. 3 Calloway locations. Debt against 2 of them. My father hired a social media consultant but not an e-commerce director. That was the business in miniature. He updated the Calloway model monthly, not obsessively methodically. Calloway was on his distressed asset list before the first Easter comment. He watched for 2 years before moving. My cousin at the summer party, "Your dad told my dad Ryan is going in the wrong direction professionally." Ryan had just closed a $40 million fund round. I watched Ryan talk to my father across the yard. My father laughed at something Ryan said, while privately telling family Ryan was going the wrong direction. I stopped being surprised. I asked what made my father laugh. Ryan said, "I asked about the Fairfield renovation. Specific questions." My father appreciated that. Ryan was building the acquisition model for that same store. Late summer, year 3, Hargrove crossed 100 million OM. Ryan's text, 100 M OM as of today. That was the whole message. We went to dinner. I thought about what my father would say if he knew. I didn't tell Ryan. We had dinner. He crossed 100 million while my father called him mediocre. I ordered salmon. October, year 3. The Greenwich Calloway location now underperforming. 2 restructures, no external consultants, a son-in-law who ran an acquisition firm. He didn't call him. Did I want Ryan to step in? Yes, every time. But Ryan said, he hasn't asked. My father hadn't asked. You cannot help someone who has decided they don't need you. Aunt Carol called in November. My mother had told people, including people outside the family, that Ryan had trapped me in a marriage I couldn't afford to leave. I told him. He was quiet. Then said, "That must have been a strange conversation for Carol to have with you." He worried about Carol's experience, not his own. Ryan found the second Calloway loan in the public records in November. He showed me without comment, updated the model for the last time. The acquisition was already in motion. Last Christmas, before the email. My father made no comment about Ryan's work. Quieter than usual. He passed Ryan the potatoes first that year. A small thing. Ryan thanked him, quieter than usual, on the drive home. After 20 minutes he said, "Your father seems tired." Not failing, tired. He had empathy for the man who called him mediocre. January, year 3. Ryan told me on a Sunday, "Paperwork starts this week, 4 to 6 weeks. Same tone as "we're out of coffee." Simply a fact that was happening. The 6 weeks between paperwork and the email were strange for me. Ryan was completely normal. He made dinner on Thursday, building a significant moment with complete normalcy. Did I want to warn them? I thought about it. Ryan said, "It's a business transaction. The notification is the appropriate moment." He'd been waiting for that moment for 3 years. Tuesday in March, he left at 5:50. My phone rang at 9:15. My mother, "Did you know about this?" I said, "I knew it was coming." True, I had known for 6 weeks. The email, Hargrove Capital has completed the acquisition of Calloway Home Interiors effective today. Terms attached. Signed, Ryan Hargrove, Managing Partner, CC, Legal Team. 1 paragraph. He called them Richard and Diane at every dinner for 3 years. The email said, Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, not accidental. Ryan never does things accidentally. For 3 years, her father said Ryan with a slight emphasis of having found him wanting. The email signed Ryan Hargrove, managing partner, his full name, his title. Looking back, my mother, why didn't you tell us? Me, it wasn't mine to disclose. She said, this is our family. I said, and that is Ryan's firm. Those are not the same thing. My father, what is this? Me, an acquisition notice. He said, he bought my business. Specific emphasis on my. The business he built from one store. The one he never asked Ryan about. I said the business was in significant distress. Ryan structured a 6-month consulting arrangement for you. He was silent, said, he knew? I said, for a while, Dad. He sent the email at 8:47. By 9:15 he was in a transition meeting. He texted, they called you? I said yes. He replied, okay. Went back to his meeting. I drove to Westport that afternoon on my own decision. Ryan didn't ask me to go or not to go. They were still my parents. That sentence was the whole decision. My father was at the kitchen table with the email printed out. He had read it multiple times, you could tell by how the paper had been handled. He was holding it when I walked in. My father, I don't understand how this happened. Me? Ryan mentioned it once. You changed the subject. He looked at the table. I said it as a fact. He knew it was one. My mother, will he keep the stores open? Me, that's his decision as the new owner. She looked at those words. The new owner. 30 years. One Tuesday morning. My father, does Ryan know what I built, what it took? Me, yes. He has the records going back 14 years. My father, he studied us. Me, he studies every acquisition target. I explained the consulting arrangement. 6 months. His title kept. Transition salary. Stores open minimum 1 year. My father, he didn't have to do that. Me, no. He didn't. I stayed an hour, nothing resolved. But my father stopped calling it Ryan's acquisition and started saying the acquisition. The pronoun shifted. That was the beginning of something. Driving home, I felt 3 things. Sad for my parents, genuinely. Proud of Ryan, not triumphant, proud. And settled. Like something unresolved had finally taken its shape. He was home. Made pasta. First question, how are they? Me, processing. Him, that's fair. He put dinner on the table. Not, what did they say? How are they? Ryan's team restructured over 8 months, closed 1 location, modernized 2, e-commerce launched within 90 days, the thing my father hadn't done in 3 years of decline. 31 employees, 26 retained, 5 received above minimum severance. My father called Ryan about the employees. Ryan answered directly. My father thanked him. First, specific thanks. My mother called Ryan 1 week after. Said she had formed a conclusion without the evidence to support it. That phrase. She had been thinking carefully. Precise in her apology. He told me that evening. She called. She apologized. I told her I was glad to work with the family on the transition. He said, with the family. Not on the business. 3 weeks after, my father called Ryan and asked for coffee. Ryan said yes without asking what for. They met at a Westport diner. Ryan drove to Westport. He always did. He came home, it went well. What did you talk about? The business, mostly. He had good ideas for the Fairfield location. Ryan said, he really did. Complete sincerity. Ryan said, at the end, your father shook my hand and held it a moment longer. The same handshake that had loosened at the engagement 3 years earlier. That was the arc. Mediocre, speculative, beneath me, going nowhere, trapped, 5 channels, 3 years, every dinner, 1 email, Tuesday 8:47 a.m. Ryan Hargrove, managing partner. It worked in every direction. Diane told her book club about the acquisition, said she was very proud of Ryan. The same book club she told I was making a mistake. She was simply proud now. No acknowledgement of the gap. Act 4. The quiet work. Not the email that was 30 seconds. The quiet work is everything Ryan built while my parents used their time to dismiss him. His first client was a colleague who called him. Said, "I have $400,000 I want you to manage." Ryan said, "I can do that." 4 words. That was how it began. He said, "I left my firm because I could see what needed doing and wasn't positioned to do it. I started Hargrove to solve the second problem." That is the most Ryan sentence I know. For 5 years before I met him, he was the most accurate analyst at his firm. Not most profitable in a quarter, most accurate over time. That was his specific skill. Ryan specializes in distressed assets, real value, wrong structure. The value exists. He fixes the structure. Calloway was exactly this. He could see it from the dining table. Ryan said, "Calloway has 30 years of brand recognition, loyal customers in affluent markets, and a footprint that costs less to acquire than build. The name alone has value." He built the Calloway model from public records, real estate data, industry benchmarks, and his own observations from every family dinner. Updated monthly for 18 months. Ryan noticed at Thanksgiving, my parents redecorated with a competitor's furniture. He said, "If your own family doesn't buy from it, the margin problem is deeper than I thought." Every morning, at his desk before 6. His team at 8. 3 hours done before anyone arrived. Not for optics, no one saw it. For the outcome, always for the outcome. 3 years closely watching him work. Not one complaint. Not about bad deals, not about difficult clients, not about my parents. He processed privately and built publicly. Year 1, 9 million ALM. Year 2, 47 million. Year 3, 112 million at acquisition. 9 to 112 in 3 years. While they called him mediocre, I asked, "What did Calloway mean personally?" He said, "It meant I was positioned to do something useful for a business with real value being mismanaged. Not revenge, useful." The 6-month consulting was complicated. My father had opinions. Ryan's team listened to the ones that were right. 3 genuinely valuable insights. They implemented all 3. He knew his stores. The quiet work was never about my parents. It was about building something he believed in. The Calloway acquisition was one event in a larger work. They were in the path of someone who knew what he was doing. People ask what the acquisition did to our marriage. Answer, nothing damaging. It clarified things. My parents began engaging with who Ryan actually was instead of who they decided he was. First family dinner after the acquisition 2 months later. My father poured Ryan a glass of wine first. A small thing. Ryan said thank you. They moved on. My father asked Ryan how the acquisition model works. "What do you look for?" Ryan explained. My father listened. Actually listened. It took an acquisition to get there. They got there. In the car, Ryan said, "Your father understands margins and customer loyalty better than most retail people I work with." Said it about the man who called him mediocre. Genuine. 1 year after, my father asks Ryan questions at every dinner now. Real questions about deals, markets, retail trends. The man who used to answer his own questions about Ryan. 1 year after, 2 locations, both profitable. E-commerce at 41% of revenue. The Calloway name still on the door. Ryan kept it. 30 years of equity doesn't need replacing. What I learned from 3 years of watching him, execution is the only answer to opinion. Not argument, not defense. Execution over time. The outcome speaks when it arrives. Ryan carries 3 things from 3 years: deeper market knowledge, a faster growing firm, and 1 email. signed with his full name and his title. That email is his staging note. I saved the email in a folder called Evidence. I'm a brand strategist. I document things, not evidence of revenge, evidence of accuracy. The record of an accurate assessment acted upon precisely. Has someone ever assessed you before the outcome was visible and been right, or consistently underestimated you while you quietly built the answer? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Hargrove had 3 other significant acquisitions in year 3 alone. Calloway was one of 4. My parents thought they were the center of the story. They were one data point. My father now consults for 2 of Ryan's other portfolio companies. He asked Ryan for more opportunities beyond the Calloway arrangement. Ryan said yes. That's a resolution I didn't anticipate. My mother now asks Ryan how he thinks about decisions, how he learned patience. She said once, "I wish I had understood your approach earlier." He said, "Not too late to start." I asked, "How do you think about them now?" He said, "They built something real, had a framework that didn't include me, the framework updated, that's fine, equal weight to both sentences. He leaves cabinet doors open. I use too many coffee pods. He's always 5 minutes early. I'm always exactly on time. He considers that late. The acquisition was easier than the cabinets. I asked, "Do you ever look at the email?" He said, "I don't look back at sent emails. Not even this one. Especially not this one. It's done." He moved on. No trophy kept. He doesn't look back at sent emails. I kept it. I read it every few months. Not for satisfaction to remember. Accurate people are patient people. He was both. The email was inevitable. Since the acquisition, I keep a documentation notebook. Observations about clients' brands they haven't noticed yet. Ryan's influence is obvious. Accurate observation before precise action. I told him the full distribution map book club. Neighbor, cousin, he listened. Said, "That must have been exhausting for you to carry." Not, "Can you believe them?" My exhaustion. I said, "Exhausting sometimes," but clarifying. It told me something about their framework I needed to understand. He said, "And now you understand it." I said, "Now I understand it." The Fairfield location, the one my father described to Ryan over a summer beer, became the e-commerce fulfillment hub. My father's own description contributed to Ryan's plan. Ryan's idea, an annual donation to a Connecticut small business fund in the Calloway name. He said, "Your father built something from nothing. That deserves to be honored forward." Ryan told my father about the donation in person. My father called me after and said, "I didn't expect that." I said, "Ryan tends to do things people don't expect." He was quiet. They said Mediocre he was closing $92 million deals. Speculative he had consistent 28+% returns. Going nowhere he was going somewhere specific, at a specific pace. What the quiet work accomplished: 112 million 4 acquisitions, 26 jobs preserved, 1 family whose opinion updated, and 1 email. Everything else was the foundation. We are approaching the verdict. Not the legal one done, not the financial one. Numbers are numbers. The verdict, what I understand now that I didn't before watching him work. Quiet work is not performed humility. It is letting the outcome carry the message instead of your own voice. Building the outcome while the room argues about whether you can. I want to tell you the last thing. One section not yet shared. Not the acquisition. Not the email. What Ryan said to me the night before the email was sent. 3 years of quiet work answered 5 channels of dismissal, built 112 million, preserved a 30-year business, and changed a family's relationship with the truth. What Ryan said the night before. What I know about accuracy and patience. What the email actually is. What it means to be seen before you are ready. Preparation is not about the moment of execution. It makes execution inevitable. Ryan didn't acquire Calloway on a Tuesday. He made it inevitable over 18 months. Tuesday was administrative. Monday evening, he said, "The email goes tomorrow." I said, "Okay." Then he said, "I want you to know it is not about them." That sentence changed how I understood everything. I asked, "Then, what is it about?" He said, "A business with real value being managed in a way that will destroy it. I can prevent that. I am going to prevent it." I said, "My father called you mediocre and you are going to save his business." He said, "I am going to acquire it and fix the structure." Those are different things. He said, "Your father built something from nothing in 30 years. Whatever he thought of my work does not change what his work was. I am going to make sure it survives." Hearing that, I understood two things at once: why I had married him, and why my parents were not just factually wrong about him, but philosophically wrong. Different measurements entirely. After that, he did the dishes, put on quiet piano, made tea, brought me a cup without being asked, the night before the most significant email of his career. That is Ryan. He left at 5:50 as always. Said, "See you tonight." I said, "Yes." He left. At 8:47, he sent the email. "See you tonight" was his goodbye on the morning of the acquisition. He forwarded it to me at 8:49, 2 minutes after sending it to my parents. No message, just the email. Subject: Calloway Home Interiors Notice of Acquisition. He went back to work. I read it twice, sat with it 5 minutes. I had known for 6 weeks. Seeing it still made something in me settle completely. Not triumph, not relief, settlement. 3 years of dinners, 5 channels of dismissal, 112 million built, 18 months of monthly model updates compressed into one paragraph sent at 8:47 am on a Tuesday. The compression teaches the visible moment is almost never where the real work was done. The email is visible. The 18 months are invisible. But the email could not exist without them. The evidence folder has 3 things: the acquisition email, Ryan's 40 under 40 listing from the same year my mother worried to the book club, and a photo of the renovated Fairfield store. My father asked to speak privately at Christmas 1 year after. Said, "I misjudged Ryan, not the work Ryan, who he was." That is the level at which my father finally understood. I said, "He doesn't need you to have been right from the beginning. He only needed you to be willing to see him clearly now." My father: "I think I can do that." Me: "He knows." My mother: "I distributed a version of Ryan to people that was not accurate." She used the word distributed. She understood her own mechanism. She named it precisely. I said, "Your worry was based on a conclusion drawn before you had the information to draw it." She said, "Yes, I know that now. When she decides to see accurately, she does it completely." The family now: my father asks real questions. My mother listens to the answers. Ryan answers everything directly. I watch the 3 of them and think, this is a better table than it was. Ryan at the better table is exactly who he was at every previous one. He didn't change when they dismissed him. He didn't change when they understood him. He was always the same. 200 clips in, what I've been building toward is not the acquisition or the email or my parents' apologies. It's what I actually understand now that I didn't understand before. The verdict is not Ryan won and my parents lost. Not the acquisition proved something. Not being right eventually is enough. All true. None of them is the verdict. The verdict is quieter. For 3 years, I watched someone be assessed inaccurately and not need the assessment to be different in order to keep building. He did not require their accuracy as a condition of his output. I learned, build for the outcome, not the audience. In my work, this means optimize for the accuracy of the analysis, not the approval of the room. My work has gotten better. What I carry, proof that accurate people do not need inaccurate people to update their assessment in order to proceed. That is the inheritance. It goes everywhere with me. This email is not a trophy, not evidence of superiority, not the conclusion of a revenge arc. It is a record of what happens when someone builds accurately and patiently. It looks like Tuesday morning. Act 4. The model updated monthly. The firm from 9 to 112 million. The acquisition. The family updated. Act 5. What it means. The real verdict. The cost and gift of being seen accurately. Act 5. Not about what Ryan built. About what being married to someone who builds accurately while being called mediocre actually teaches. What it costs. What it gives. Both real. Both named. The cost. 3 years carrying the gap between who Ryan was and who my parents decided he was. 3 years sitting between my husband and my parents' opinion of him. Part of the cost, knowing Ryan's numbers, his clients, his recognitions, and not being able to use them because he had asked me not to defend him. Knowing and not being able to share. What it gave, the knowledge that accurate people do not need to be correctly perceived to proceed. I knew it intellectually before. I know it in my body now. There is a difference. What it gave, part 2, a clearer relationship with my parents than we would have had without the acquisition. They see Ryan now. They know they had been on incomplete information. Part 3, I know who I married not after 6 months, but after watching someone be assessed inaccurately for 3 years and never flinch. Not once. I know exactly who I married. The verdict, when you build accurately and patiently and independently of other people's assessment, the outcome is not revenge, not triumph, not proof. The outcome is a Tuesday morning. What is the email? Revenge? Karma? Justice? None of those things. It is a business communication. 8:47 a.m. Filed in the sent folder, not looked at again. Its consequences were not its purpose. I told him I was going to share this story. He said, okay. I said, people will see it as revenge. He said, let them frame it how they need to. The acquisition is what it is. Has someone been dismissive of your work while you quietly built the thing that proved them wrong, not to you, but to itself? Or have you been the one who dismissed someone and later understood? He named the firm after himself, not arrogant specificity. You name something after yourself to say, I am responsible for what this becomes. No diffusion of accountability. He made it mean something. He signed, Ryan Hargrove, managing partner, Hargrove Capital. For 3 years, Ryan with the slight emphasis of assessment, the email, his full name, complete identity, after 3 years of partial assessment. The potatoes were not humility, not performance, not patience demonstrated for an audience. He passed them because they needed to be passed. He was never performing, he was just there. He told me the night before, so I had the night to be with the knowledge not to be surprised by the morning. He gave me the night. That is a specific form of care. We are approaching the loop close. The email is open now. You know what it contains. You know how it got there. Everything that was once sealed is now open. That is the whole point. My parents spent 3 years telling everyone my husband was a failure. 5 channels. 31 months of family dinners. It was real. It happened. I am not minimizing it. It is named. While my father nodded and my mother distributed the wrong narrative, Ryan was at his desk before 6 a.m. Not building to prove them wrong. Building because he believed in it. On a Tuesday in March, 3 years into our marriage, he sent one email. Ryan Hargrove, managing partner. CC, legal team. It is in his sent folder. He has not looked at it since. The real verdict, accurate, patient, independent work, is its own answer to dismissal. Not because the dismissers see it, because the work becomes the record of what was actually true. What I carry, the man I married, does not require accurate perception to produce accurate work. And I am building my own version of that. Slower, but building. For the outcome, not the approval. Hargrove Capital today, 11 employees, 240 million OM, 6 portfolio companies. He is still at his desk before 6 a.m. Everything else has changed. He has not. He makes dinner Thursdays, I make it Sundays. Cabinet doors open, too many coffee pods, he's 5 minutes early, I'm exactly on time, which he considers late. Unresolved. I accept this. We are back where we started. This desk. This apartment. This email. The difference, at the beginning, you didn't know how the email got here. Now you do. That is what the story was. In clip 1, I held this email, and you knew nothing. Now you know what my parents said, what Ryan built, what the email contains, why it was sent, and what it means. Same email. Everything else different. His sent folder has thousands of emails. The Calloway notice is one of thousands. He does not know which page it is on. He has not looked. He does not look back at sent emails. I keep it in an evidence folder and return to it. He keeps it in a sent folder and has not opened it since. Same email. 2 different relationships to it. Both of us perfectly described. 31 months of dinners, potatoes passed, dishes carried, meals thanked, hands shaken produced, a consulting father, an apologizing mother, and a Fairfield store that is the e-commerce hub. Every morning he says, "See you tonight." Over 1,000 mornings of our marriage. He means it every time. He goes to work. He comes home. He makes dinner Thursday. Cabinet doors open. Ryan does not know what I said about him in this story. The potatoes. The Monday evening. See you tonight. He'd not be surprised I named them. He'd be mildly embarrassed. That is Ryan. Tonight he will come home. I will tell him I shared the story. He will say, okay. He will ask what he should make for dinner. It is not his night. He will offer anyway. I have told you everything. The email, where it came from, the cost, the gift, what they said, what he built, what he said the night before. The loop is about to close. My parents spent 3 years calling him a failure. He spent 3 years building. On a Tuesday morning, his title and his firm stated in one email, CC, the legal team. Then he went back to work. This is where we started. This desk. This email. At the beginning, it was sealed, the story not yet told. Now it is open. Now you know everything. The loop is closed. My parents told everyone my husband was a failure. He bought their company. He sent one email, signed his full name, then he went back to work. The rest of this story was mine to tell. The blank page is not empty, it is waiting. Ryan's model was blank for a year before he filled it. The best documents start blank and become precise through time and attention. Battery Park. I know what I'm building. I know how long it takes. I want to build it with you. A business plan, a timeline projection, and a partnership proposal. He proposed in his only language. My father's toast, find its footing. Ryan thanked him and raised his glass and said nothing. 3 years before the email. When he said that, Ryan was building at 47 million OM. After the wedding, he said, it tells me where the bar is. 3 years later, the Calloway business is inside his portfolio. The bar was cleared so far above that the original is a footnote. Easter hallway. I heard mediocre. 2 choices. I walked back to the table and put my hand on his arm. He kept talking. He didn't need to know yet. He was already building the answer. The Monday after Easter, he began the model. He told me later, Easter was the day I decided to formalize. Not retaliate, not prove, formalize. That is the cleanest description of who Ryan is. First handshake, loosened at the second answer about revenue. The handshake after the Westport diner coffee held a moment longer. 3 years and 1 acquisition. The arc of a single handshake. 31 months of potatoes passed at every Calloway table. Then one Tuesday, Ryan Hargrove, managing partner. The potatoes in the email are the same man, both exactly who he is. Has someone ever built something quietly and accurately for the work itself, and you only understood the full weight of it later? Or are you building something like that right now? I read every comment. Calloway Home Interiors 1 year after, 2 locations, both profitable, 41% e-commerce, 26 employees, the Calloway name on both doors. My father built something real. Ryan made it last. The book club arc, worried about Maya, struggling, maybe trapped. Then, very proud of Ryan, most recently, very good instinct for what a business needs. The full book club arc. My cousin after the acquisition, he bought their company? Me. His firm did, yes. I keep that distinction, it is Ryan's. She said, that is wild. I said yes. We went to lunch. My father at dinner now, he asks Ryan the first question. Before anyone, he asks first. For 3 years he answered questions about Ryan before asking them. The direction has reversed. My mother now, she follows up on Ryan's answers. Asks a second question when the first interests her. She never used to follow up. Following up means you believe the answer is worth pursuing. Ryan at the current dinner, exactly who he was at the first. When my mother follows up, he answers with the same quality as the first, not more because she is interested now. That is just his quality. I knew when I married him. From the 3 questions. From Battery Park. From the car after the toast. From the potatoes. From okay when I said mediocre. 3 years confirmed what I already knew. First notebook entry after the acquisition, accurate people do not require correct perception to produce accurate work. Written the day after the email, still the most important line. His desk, 2 screens, a legal pad, 3 acquisition models, a coffee mug, and a photo of us at Battery Park. No trophies, no framed articles, no awards on the walls. That is enough for him. This story is about what happens when accurate work meets sustained dismissal and the work does not notice. The work just keeps being accurate. The dismissal eventually runs out of things to say. The loop closes on the same desk. Same email. I have changed. My parents have changed. Ryan has not. The Calloway business has. 3 years happened. The loop closes on all of that at once. My parents told everyone my husband was a failure. He bought their company 3 years later. 1 email. His full name. His new title. Then he went back to work. The quiet work was always the story. 1 more look. Subject, Calloway Home Interiors Notice of Acquisition. Sender, Ryan Hargrove, Managing Partner. Filed in the sent folder, never reopened. Filed in her evidence folder. Same email. 2 addresses. Before the last line, the business is doing well. My father consulting for 2 of Ryan's other firms. My mother, Ryan has excellent judgment. The Fairfield store is open. Her father's 30 years still stands. This morning, he left at 5:50. Said see you tonight. He is at his desk right now. Probably since 5:55. Building the next thing. I do not always know what it is. He tells me when the paperwork starts. I do not know the next target the paperwork hasn't started. What I know, he is at his desk. 2 screens. A model. Somewhere a business is on that model and doesn't know what's coming. The email is in his sent folder, not looked at since. I have it in the evidence folder. I look at it sometimes to remind myself of the only thing that matters. Back where we started. Same desk, same email, same morning light. At the beginning, this was the beginning. Now, it is the end. The same email. Everything between them was the story. Monday evening, last thing, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know this is not the biggest thing I'm building. He said it quietly, went to bed, at his desk at 5:50 the next morning. The only thing that matters, the work. Not the opinion, not the assessment, not the book club, the work. Accurate, patient, independent. It becomes the record of what was actually true. My parents told everyone my husband was a failure. He bought their company, he sent one email, then he went back to work. I opened my notebook and began the next 18 months. So did he.